Hey, everybody. Fascinating chat today, diving into the world of cutting edge consumer and customer experiences with a true innovator in the space from Willowtree. Tobias, how are you?
Good. How are you, Evan?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for joining here on a Friday. Really intrigued by the work you and the team are doing. Maybe start with introductions to yourself and your biography. Also, who is Willowtree?
Yeah, so I've been in and around tech since AOL. I started in AOL at AOL in '96, and I think for many of us, that's really the dawn of the consumer internet. And that's where I learned relentless focus on the consumer and really consumer experiences. We started Willowtree about 2010, early 2010. With the idea that the iPhone was going to be a big deal, and we wanted to provide app development services at the time for leading companies. So we started working with companies like Johnson & Johnson, built the first streaming app for HBO, those kinds of things. And then Willowtree has evolved into a full services digital consultancy, digital product agency. We build large scale applications with always keeping a strong focus on the user experience for our clients.
Oh, fantastic. Value prop. And I see you often start with strategy as the fundamentals, getting strategy right before embarking on some sort of digital project or transformation. Why is that so important? Seems obvious, but not always the case.
Yeah, I think you have to marry what's the business need of any digital product with what's going to appeal to the consumer and what's going to get the consumer to use it. And then the third leg of that stool is how are you going to build it? How expensive is it? And you've got to tie those three things together early. I think when we look at, there's a number of reasons why digital projects fail, but a big reason is there's not enough strategy and thought on the get-go and not enough focus on what the business goals are coupled with the consumer goals. And so that's just been a critical piece of what we do for clients. And part of that is always prioritizing features, right? You can build anything, but you can't build everything, especially at once. And really having a rigorous framework so that we understand what features to build in what order. And I think that's invaluable for clients, especially when there's lots of different viewpoints, usually within large organizations.
Yeah, well said. And you're known for pushing the envelope when it comes to design. And you mentioned Apple there. Of course, Steve Jobs was a master of balancing design and innovation. How do you see, the perfect balance between the two, making sure the product is still easy to service, still easy to use, while innovative and different?
Yeah, I mean, Apple, when we started this company, was the company we were trying to emulate.
Mm.
We always said early days, we build apps that Apple would build for our clients. And what Steve was so good at, and Apple as a company is so good at, is this relentless focus on providing value to the end user, right? I think when you look at big flops in technology, they were often incredible technologies in and of themselves. And when you saw them, you were blown away by them. It could be 3D TV, it could be
Mm.
Google Glass, et cetera. They were incredible innovations. But at the end of the day, they didn't really solve a consumer need. And so we have this relentless focus on why would consumers use something? And that if you answer that early, you're usually going to be successful in technology.
Yeah, well said. And how do you and the team think about staying ahead of or up with tech trends? Really tough these days. Every day there's a new model, AI model, a new platform. There's constantly evolving, changing. What's your sort of best practices there for staying on top of it as a team, as an organization?
Yeah, I mean, the amount of noise these days is incredible, right? And you can spend your whole day just trying to stay on top of the trends, and it seems to accelerate every year. We have a methodology where we really break down new technologies and try to figure out what is it that is going to drive consumer adoption, right? And it's usually, is it going to make something that consumers are already doing easier, cheaper, more enjoyable? or allow them to do something that they've never done before, but that in and of itself makes their lives easier, better, et cetera. So it's easy to say, but it's hard to analyze, right? When you look at technologies like 3D TV, why did it fail? It's because it's extremely cumbersome. You don't want everyone in a room wearing 3D glasses. It just didn't take into account consumer behavior. Whereas smartphones and the iPhone made everything, the internet was always on, always with you. Apps were faster than websites. It solved a lot of problems that consumers were excited about. And so, when we started, we get asked all the time by our clients, like, there was the PC evolution, then the internet evolution, then mobile, like what's next? It's been 12, 15 years since the mobile smartphone revolution. What's happening now? And we really believe it's voice, and specifically AI-powered voice, because it solves so many consumer problems and user problems that exist in current interfaces. And a lot of the things that, the metaverse, as an example, not clear to me what it really solves, but voice is clear as day to me what it solves.
Yeah, absolutely. And, speaking of voice UX, voice bots, I had hundreds of guests on from different voice AI companies. We're all talking about the importance of user experience, but from your point of view, what makes a user experience, user interface stand out? And, how does a project deliver on that in the real world? Not always straightforward.
Yeah, I mean, we started studying voice 5, 6 years ago probably 8 or 9 years ago, really, when, Siri came out, Alexa came out. For a while, Alexa and combined with Siri, if you took the two of them together, was the fastest adoption of any new technology prior to AI, Gen AI, in human history. But it hadn't really changed the world the way the internet had or the way mobile had. And we're asking ourselves, we all want to use voice. We're all using voice to some extent, but it's not life-changing, kind of what's going on here. And we really broke the problem down into a couple different components. The reason we want to use voice is because speaking is so much faster than typing. It's about 3 times as fast as on a keyboard. It's about 5 times as fast as on a mobile device. So it's super efficient for us to speak. And that's why you see us all the time lifting our phones up to our mouth speaking. The problem with voice is listening is very cumbersome and slow. And we actually read 3 times as fast as we listen to words. And graphically, obviously, it can be much, much faster. And so the whole premise of voice bots, voice-to-voice experience, is deeply flawed because we all want to speak, but we don't want to listen. And, I always use the example of movies, right? We had movie phone 20 years ago. That's a voice-to-voice experience. Not awesome. At the time, we used it because it was the only way to get information. But I want to ask Alexa or Siri what movies are playing tonight, but I don't want to listen to their response. What I want is I want to ask the question, and then I want to see the response on an app, like my Regal Cinemas app, and then look at it and say, all right, get me 2 tickets for Star Wars at 8. And so a multimodal future is what we're really focused on, where we as humans speak, but the machines are either reacting to us with text or visual responses or just doing what we're asking them to do. And it's not a two-way conversation. And I think that's really, once people start going down that road, and they're starting to right now, and Apple's recognizing this with some of their intelligence tools, and certainly OpenAI is recognizing it with how they're organizing the whole setup to the voice-powered pieces of ChatGPT, we're gonna get into a multimodal future. And I think you're going to see a world very, very soon, especially after some of these products launch from Apple, where we're all just going to be speaking to our apps instead of like swiping, typing, et cetera. And we're just going to be telling our apps, switch my seat on my airline, check in for me, whatever it is. And that's going to make life just so much more efficient than it is today.
I can't wait. It's something we've all been excited to see a better implementation of. And as a large software and services and design house, you talk a lot about agile development on the back end. And of course, agile is a big deal. But how do you think about software development, agile development in a world of, real world implementation with side by side working on code creation bots. It's not just humans creating software anymore. What does that mean to the future of your business and doing more with the same engineers and doing better
Yeah,
with
I mean,
code assisted creation?
I think it's super exciting. I think when you look at most of our large clients have a backlog of features that they want to build that are years, 2 to 3 years of backlog.
Wow.
And always frustration in terms of the velocity at which software can be developed. So I get questions, and I even get questions internally from my team saying, "Are we all going to be obsolete in 3-4 years?" And all the software is going to be created by bots. And the answer is you're always going to need the higher level thinking and the strategic thinking and the user facing thinking done by human beings. And the velocity is going to massively increase because of the automation, but the demand for new software is also going to go up exponentially. So the world does not sit still. There's no, I don't know if you probably remember, Evan, in the late 90s or early 2000s, someone had a TV ad about someone was surfing all night and they got to the end of the internet. They saw the whole thing. There's no end to demand for new software, right? Whenever there's new software built, there's more improvements that people want, more features they want, et cetera. So our business, I think, is only going to continue to accelerate, especially if we can provide, a high level of velocity. The benefit ultimately are companies and ultimately consumers, because software is going to get better and better and answer more questions more efficiently, et cetera. If you think about it, how frustrated do we still get by some of the limitations on the app we use for our airline or the app we use for our bank? And those are going to get better real quickly, I think, over the next coming years.
Yeah, I can't wait to see it. When it comes to customers, you have a blue chip list of who's who as customers, really deep partnerships, and you also work with startups. How do you balance, working across so many different customers and industries? And you care to call out any anecdotes or stories of the kind of clients you're working with?
Yeah, so our bread and butter, so to speak, is large Fortune 500 kind of clients, right? They have very significant problems. They have incredible brands, but they're usually in any industry being disrupted by digital-only players. And we always like to say we help existing companies disrupt the disruptors, right? We help them fight back. And some of that is process improvement. Some of it is working on specific projects for them that need to be accelerated. But those are large partnerships, and you can look at our website, but it's companies like HBO, MasterCard, Charles Schwab, CBS Sports, et cetera, Fox News, a lot of different large companies that we help do that. But we also work with smaller companies, especially tech startups that are in an early phase where they haven't hired or not able at quickly enough to hire the expertise that they need. And those are super exciting projects for us. They're not as big, but the teams love them because you're working usually on something very, very innovative with a small team that moves fast. And so for our team, I love having both of those options for team members to do at different times in their careers.
Oh, it's a fantastic opportunity for employees there. Yeah, and talk about data-driven decision making. You talk about sort of AI consulting. Will AI be consultants moving forward, and how much of a role will AI play in decision making moving forward? Things like life cycle of products and even product decisions, iterating on ideas for launches. I mean, what's the opportunity there as a consulting organization?
Yeah, so I think the big opportunity is how to deploy AI in all these areas and helping our clients think through that and do that, right? What is AI really good at? It's very good at creating content that's based on existing content. It's also very good at synthesizing lots of data into highly analyzed pieces of information. but it's not good at creating and synthesizing things from completely different sources. So it's not people feel that it's creative, but it's creative in the sense that it can copy what William Shakespeare did, but it can't necessarily be William Shakespeare the first time. And so I think from a strategic perspective, it's really going to help companies get at all the data that they already have and synthesize what they have. But it's human beings are going to have to then look at that data and use that data to help make strategic decisions. Because at the end of the day, what's business, right? Business at the end of the day, you're selling something to human beings that they want. And so it's a human to human enterprise that machines can help us analyze, but machines are never going to be the ones that really figure out. They're going to help us test a lot of things, but they're never going to be the creative mind that figures out, hey, this is the best content or the best product that's going to appeal to humans the same way a human designer can think about that.
A really, really great insight. And speaking of innovation and creativity, you tell us about your book, The Sound of the Future. I haven't read it, but what's the big idea? What are some of the ideas behind this book?
Yeah, so we wrote the book because we kept getting asked by clients, what's the next big thing? And we kept telling them it was voice. And then they would say, you know what, we tried to do some Alexa skills and we tried to do some integrations with Siri and it did nothing for us. Like, I think you're wrong on this voice thing. And that's when we started doing all this research as to why do we want to use voice, but we don't really. And we went down, as I was talking about earlier, the analysis that we came up with was the future is multimodal. It's voice powered, but it's AI driven multimodal. And that's really what the book is about. And it takes, and speed is not the only reason. There's a lot of other reasons that voice is such a powerful tool. You think about working in a warehouse where you're using both your hands and you're trying to communicate with the system, right? Or in law enforcement or in medicine, there's so many use cases where you want to use your voice to communicate information to the system. But today you have to use your hands because you have to type. I actually use an example. My wife's a surgeon, and there's a certain procedure she has to do where she has to hit some buttons in the middle of the surgery on a machine. She can't do it because she's in the surgery, and so she has to actually use her foot. She uses her toe and this is a true story. Imagine a surgeon, tapping their toe on a machine and that's
amazing.
It's an obvious little voice case. And it applies to, what went wrong with the Boeing 737 MAX crashes. It was that pilots didn't know how to interact with the machine, with the plane, because it was too complex. If they had voice commands, they would have been able to just say fly straight and et cetera. And that's not, Star Wars stuff. That both the United States Air Force, the Russian Air Force now have voice controlled cockpits for that exact reason. And we go through industry by industry, example by example of how voice is going to impact a variety of different industries, and then make some guesses as to what that means for that industry. That's the hard part, right? That's the creative part. And I always go back to the example when Steve Jobs announced the iPhone, no one was sitting around saying, who's really screwed right now? The taxi industry. Because you couldn't even imagine that something like Uber was going to happen in the next couple of years and change transportation. And that's what's going to happen with voice. This platform is going to become ubiquitous, and it's going to change the way industries and a lot of our consumer relationship with companies work.
Oh, I can't wait. It's a fascinating area to watch. So we're in the dog days of summer here, rather wet summer here in Boston. But what are you excited about the rest of the summer and into the fall, personally, professionally, otherwise?
Well, I just had a great trip to Norway. And if you haven't been, I would say if
I have not been,
in most of the United States where it's been brutally hot, it's it's an amazing place to get off the plane and get a kind of much cooler summer up there.
Wow.
It's just spectacular. From a job perspective, technology perspective, I think this fall is going to be a really, really big deal because Apple's going to launch its intelligence products onto its mobile devices, the iPhone, and they're going to be heavily voice first and AI first. And I think it's the first, very large leap forward in the iPhone interface in probably 6-7 years. Step function. Android is obviously going to follow very quickly. And so I think you're going to be looking at over the next year or two, most companies are going to rebuild their mobile apps to take advantage of AI and of voice. And so I think it's going to be a super exciting time in mobile specifically because for a lot of companies, their apps aren't that different now than they were 5 years ago, and I think that's about to change.
Well, it'll be fun to see AI and voice technology in the hands of average, regular day people, not just geeks and nerds like us. But also, maybe you could help Apple with some of their agile methodologies. I hear some of that is slipping into the end of the year, early next year. So it'll be interesting to watch. No comment from you needed there, but I definitely appreciate all of your insights and expertise. Been really great chatting.
Thanks, Evan. I loved spending time with you.
Likewise. Thanks so much. And thanks for listening and watching, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.